Hi, it's Jane Wright here. I'm talking about, well, menopause, but particularly an element of menopause that becomes very problematic and symptomatic for women. It's very surprising when, you'd think, oh, menopause, well, late 50s. But you can begin to see changes usually around 32 years old that begin that process of change. One of the first signs you see that imply that someone is having some hormonal shifts is this area in the web space of the hand here ends up becoming pitted. If you look at a 20-year-old, this area here is very smooth. But at 32, you start to see little kind of dents in there that nobody else would notice, don't worry, but it is an indicator. And so what begins to happen is that the hormonal changes start slowly. In the brain, there's an organ called the pituitary, and there's the front part of the pituitary called the anterior pituitary. And this is a place where the elemental changes begin to be obvious. The ovaries, the uterus and ovaries produce hormones, estrogen and progesterone, that send a message up to the hypothalamus and then to the anterior pituitary that says, okay, that's enough. But that message increasingly becomes delivered late, and so the production continues. So, by the time people start to notice this, they can have usually right around 30% of an elevation. It has taken place in those anterior pituitary hormones, which are follicle-stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. And why is that so significant? Well, follicle-stimulating hormone is what they call a proliferant. It's a growth stimulator. For you gardeners, it's kind of like spring, the way things germinate, the way things grow so fast. I have some plants, peonies, for instance, that will grow 6 inches in a day. That's a proliferant taking place that is stimulating the plant to just go that fast. Well, if those proliferants in the follicle-stimulating hormone, they're coming. The target organ is the ovaries, and afterwards the corpus luteum, which is where the egg erupts out of the sidewall of the ovary, and then cells join it until it's no longer viable. It's called the corpus luteum. Well, those are being stimulated an incredible amount in a very short time, 2 weeks. It goes between like the size of my fist to the size of a school bus, relationally, in a very short time. Tremendous proliferation. Why is that a problem? Well, if the proliferation is excessive, and you can get to the point where you have 100% too much of these hormones going on, and you have this proliferation, it's growing, then anything that can grow, unfortunately, is stimulated to grow. So oftentimes with perimenopause and menopause, women run into just tremendous chronic infection, fungal infection, bacterial infection, as well as viral infection. And so one's own hormones are working against putting these things in check. And it's very significant because of what is near the target organ. The ovaries are near the large intestine, they're near the kidney. And so all these organs end up having a growth stimulator enter into their ken. And so infection, anything that can grow will. Infection or cancer can be really, really stimulated, even if you have the purest diet in the world. and have no stress at all, these hormones can go way, way overboard. The other element of it is a proteolytic element. Proteolytic meaning protein dissolving. And so, if you have something dissolving protein, it's becoming, the modern term for the nickname for it would be leaky. So you have, a leaky kidney or a leaky large intestine. Well, that becomes very significant because the large intestine is full of toxic materials. And so it's supposed to be sequestered, the materials in the large bowel. It's supposed to be put aside and sealed aside. So, there are so many microbes in everybody's large intestine that they call it the human biome now, or and biodesis is another term that is used. And so if the hormones have been thrown off by even one usage of antibiotics in one's lifetime, then this hormone can come in and stimulate it, but then it makes the large bowel leaky. And so these microbes end up into the peritoneal tissue, into the lymphatic tissue, and it's so toxic. And toxic means fatigue. So the woman who has a lot of toxicity entering into the system, is fatigued. Her color is usually kind of not great, greenish yellow. And, chronic headaches are often a phenomenon. There's a whole host of things, as well as local, irritating infection that just can't be attended to with no matter what antibiotics or herbs that one is using. So this condition that all women run into sometime after 30 and the rest of a woman's life generates three basic themes in the body. Inflammation, and people know what inflammation means. It's red, it's hot. But then fibrosis is the next step. And fibrosis is a kind of selective stiffening. It's usually reversible, but it makes the tissues actually not slide over each other very well subsequently. And then after fibrosis is present for any length of time, then sclerosis is the next step. Fibrosis is reversible, but sclerosis is really very difficult to reverse. So, generally speaking, this can affect any area of the body, from the eyes to the blood vessels, anywhere. So working with follicle stimulating hormone to start, we need to access the pituitary. And in this situation, you have to access the pituitary from both sides. You can do both at the same time if you anatomically can reach. I'll show you. But where is the pituitary? The pituitary is about this far back, about this far, right, kind of right under the upper flap of the ear. And it's in the very center of the head. So the pituitary is accessed from above the right ear and above the left ear. And so how to work with the follicle stimulating hormone. You have this device here, which is a paper towel holder cut to 9 inches. See, 9 inches. And you use that because the point of reference that you're going to be treating is off the body, and it's so easy to migrate and not be in the right position. So if you use this properly, you'll always find the right space. So both of these hormonal treatments are done on the right side of the body only. I'm not sure why, but they aren't done on the left. You find the outside edge of the eye socket, not the eyeball, but the eye socket. And you follow that straight up to where you run into the place where you want to wear a headband, which is called the coronal suture. And you place the tube right there on that intersection between this line and this line. And you put your hand out at the edge of it. So then you're going to access those 2 points right above the ear flap. Now see how I've had my head tipped over to the side to be able to reach this? And so I'm doing both at a time. I can do one side at a time if my arms are not flexible enough, for instance, to do that. But you hang out in this position. The first time you do it for 5 minutes, unless you're very young. Unless you're just barely 30, then you can do it for 2 to 3 minutes. But for the first whole month, you do it every day for 2 to 3 minutes, just resting in this position. It's very comfortable doing this lying down because everything's lined up with the bed or the table. And so, yeah, after a month, 45 seconds is adequate. And this will lower that follicle stimulating hormone, that tremendous proliferant. Okay. So we just went over the follicle stimulating hormone treatment. This next part of the necessity of lowering these hormones is the luteinizing hormone. And luteinizing hormone, as I said before, it makes the protein structures basically dissolve and become hyperpermeable and hyperporous. And that's all well and good when there isn't something poisonous inside, like the large bowel, or microbial, like the large bowel. So this next step is equally important. With this treatment, you also are going to be accessing the pituitary access point just slightly underneath the upper flap of the ear. You can do both sides at once, which saves some time, or you can do one side at a time. And so with this treatment, your orientation is also just the right only. So halfway across the right eyebrow, with your hand turned toward your face, you are then holding those pituitary access points again. And the actual point of the therapeutic activity is up in the air off your forehead. So if you put your thumb right halfway across your eyebrow and you turn your hand to be lined up with you don't want it to be like this, you want it to be like this, and cover those points. You then, at first, the first time you go through it, you do it for close to 5 minutes. But then 2 to 3 minutes a day for a month. And then subsequently 45 seconds is sufficient. With this one, you can do it lying down also, because it tends to be fairly comfortable with your resting on that point on your eyebrow. Or it's certainly very comfortable to do it against a desk and have something holding your arm up and connecting with those pituitary access points again. And so that is how you do the second part, the luteinizing hormone treatment.